In the dark, huh? Well, welcome. Let's see if this. There we go. Uh, I hope people can hear me. Um, and welcome for coming. Let's see if there's a one, two. Yeah, it looks like there's audio here, and we're going to start in a minute. And somehow I don't know how I. There we go. So there I am. Hey, I'm going to wait just a couple minutes here to start. This is remarkable to me. I mean, the fact that it can stream live on YouTube, it's just amazing to me. Hey, Senya OK from Africa, from Ghana. All right. Glad you're here. I'm glad you're all here. I see you all here, and I'm glad. Thanks for saying you could hear me because I didn't know it said my mic had been shut off or something. So, but that I was just going to say, I just can't believe that I can live stream on YouTube and meet to all around the world. It's just amazing. I'm here in outside of Santa Fe, New Mexico, United States, and people from all over the world. I've had students now in 167 countries. And so to me, that's just absolutely a joy and amazing. We've sort of transcended geography with these internet tools, and it's absolutely marvelous. So we're going to start here in, let's see, once it gets to 10 o'clock, and it's at 9:59 now. And so I just want to wait. And so it's a pleasure. Thanks for showing up. And you can ask questions as we go along. And then also, this will be archived in the community and also on YouTube, so that you can also watch it later. So it's 10 o'clock, where I am, and welcome. We're deep into 2026 already. This is the middle of February. Wow, 6 weeks has basically gone by in the new year. And so this month's webinar is on strategic thinking. And so I'm just going to add here's the my slides. And it's based on, this is my strategy book, and that's where a lot of my ideas I've sort of collated into that book. And so that's a thing that's available on Amazon. It's also available as a PDF in the community, the MBA ASAP community, which I encourage you all to join. And so this is where these first ideas are coming from. And yeah, basically the book, there's 4 or 5 different levels of strategy, right? Strategic thinking is basically the first part, and that's what we're going to talk about today. And it's absolutely critical for everything in our lives, right? Just our personal life, to have a strategy, to think about our careers, to think about our education, to think about our physical health, to think about our relationships. Everything should be thought of with a strategic component, long-term big thinking. So from strategic thinking, we move on to strategic planning. And that's usually where you make a strategic plan at the end of. And the key, though, is like a lot of companies, they do a strategic weekend or a little getaway, and then they make a strategic plan. It's okay, here's our plan. And then that gets, put up on the shelf, and it's sort of thought of as a static document, which it really isn't. It's organic. It's developing all the time, right? You make a plan, that plan then confronts reality, and then you see how it's working, and then you course direct and modify it, after you've implemented it. And that's the managing part. It's a continual process of refinement. What's working, what's not, and where did you guess right? Where did you guess wrong in your strategic thinking? So here's the agenda for today. I'm going to talk first about strategy in general, and then strategic thinking in particular, and then talk about some elements of strategy. and then look at a few strategic thinkers, some of the great, the real brilliant ones that the books and the people that I think you should pay attention to, and maybe the books you should read to really get a handle on strategy. It's such an interesting subject, and as I'm a big proponent of lifelong learning, so we're always continuously trying to develop our skills and learning. And these thinkers will help us to do that better. And then I have at the end some frameworks for better strategic decisions based on a new book of mine in the ASAP series that's available on Amazon. And it's economic frameworks, using economics for frameworks for better decision making. And there's basically four economic frameworks. There's microeconomics, macroeconomics, managerial economics, and behavioral economics. And I go through those, and we have a couple of little case studies, and it's kind of interesting, that part there. So stay tuned for that. So here I just have something for you. When you hear the word strategy, what comes to mind? Is it vision and big picture, or the planning and execution, some sort of a competitive advantage, or fancy PowerPoint slides? And I think that's a lot of it sometimes, right? Is that people just, make a bunch of fancy PowerPoint slides. You see these, incredible consulting firms, the McKinseys, the Boston Consulting Group, the Bains, and it's a lot about fancy PowerPoint slides, telling people, what they should do. I like that phrase. A consultant is somebody who takes your watch to tell you what time it is. But no, they're great. I mean, so I see a few of you saying, yeah, these different things, vision and big picture. That's pretty much, all those things are correct. But vision and big picture, and then implementation later. But strategic thinking, is going to be vision and big picture, and that's where we're thinking today. So raise your hand if you ever sat through a strategic plan, at work or something that really nothing changed. It was just an exercise that everybody went through. Okay. Yep. I see it. I hear you. So why strategy matters? Why do we do this? Well, basically what it does is align thinking with action. And that's the key. You want to have a plan, you want to know what to do, and then you want to have a way to implement that plan. And that's moving from strategy basically to tactics, right? An interesting thing, I like this quote. It's from one of the great World War II generals, that amateurs think about strategy and professionals think about logistics. And that's basically what it comes down to, in war or big things. It's like, do we have the resources, and can we deploy the resources to where they need to be to make our strategy work? So that's another thing to keep in mind. Strategy fits into a bigger picture. So let's first talk about strategy, just in general. This is, it's from the Greek word, and I just love the old Greek, spelling. If you haven't, it's kind of fun to learn the ancient Greek and the modern Greek alphabet. These strategia is basically what that says. It's the art. It was from military, troop leading, generalship. It's a high level plan to achieve your goals, right? And it's a comprehensive way to pursue political ends. That's one of the. It's very good in politics, right? Not just in business. We think a lot about in business, because it's important, because we have certain constrained resources. We have limited resources to achieve goals. So you have to figure out what you want to do and how you're going to mobilize, as I was just saying with logistics, mobilize those resources to execute an action. There's a couple of ways that strategy can happen. One is it can be intended. It's like a top-down thing. Okay, here's our strategic thinking. Here's what we want to do. Now we're going to implement that plan, and everything's going to go according to plan, which it doesn't. You have to, as when your plan confronts reality, there's going to be some changes that need to be made. Or it can be an emergent property, right, where your strategy basically bubbles up, and suddenly, oh my gosh, you start to see things that you didn't know, you might not even have been thinking of. You're thinking about going in this direction, and over here is what starts to develop, and it's like, oh my goodness. So you have to be aware to realize when a strategy is emerging that may be very good for you, and then be opportunistic about implementing that. So what's the difference between strategy and tactics? We hear these words, right? And here's a nice little, quadrant thing. The term tactics and strategy, they're often confused and used. The tactics are the means to gain the objective. The strategy is going to define the objective, right? You're making your overall campaign, and then you have to have all the different things, the operations, activities, all the decision making that govern, and then you have tactical execution. And that's basically the difference between, say, management and leadership, right? Leadership is vision, big picture, communicating that vision, getting everybody on the same page, going the same direction. Man is about executing that plan. It being an executive is being, executing. So, what realms does strategy really have effect in? And as we were saying, not just in business, but in war. Basically, that's where the name came from, the Greek. In politics, and basically, I think it was von Clausewitz, the old Prussian general, said that war is an extension of diplomacy by other means. So it's they're kind of very similar, right? Diplomacy, negotiations, negotiating tactics, game theory, obviously, is an interesting part of it. And then, sports, you have to have a strategy. We just watched the Super Bowl here in the United States, and the team with the better strategy won. And in business, of course. And here's just a couple of books to look at. I just quoted von Clausewitz. I really like him. He's something, and his book on war is pretty amazing. And The Art of War, the old Sun Tzu book, The Prince by Machiavelli. Blue Ocean is a wonderful strategy book where you try to find a place where there isn't competition. A red ocean is where it's filled with blood from sharks. There's a lot of competition. Blue ocean is where there's no competition. Like Peter Thiel said, is you're trying to develop a monopoly. And so that, in a blue ocean strategy, that's basically what you're doing. You're finding where's the niche where you're not going to have to compete because you have unique properties. And that's a great way to think about strategy. Competitive strategy, that's a great book. We'll talk about that a little bit further on with Michael Porter. He's a professor at Harvard and just a brilliant strategist. And that book, it came out in the 80s, really, really changed people's thinking on strategy. Same thing with Mind of the Strategist. That's by Kenichio Mai. He's a Japanese manager of McKinsey, the consulting firm. And that book came out in the 80s too. Still highly relevant and an incredible look at strategy. We'll talk about those two books and another one later on in this when we look at a couple of the big thinkers. So one of the things, just a quick thing about, what's a good way to sort of structure a strategy? Simple, right? SWOT analysis. You look at your strengths and your weaknesses, and you look at your opportunities and the threats from the outside. If you do all those things, you can do that personally, and we really should all the time. What are your strengths? We should soar with our strengths, build on our strengths. What are our weaknesses? We need to be aware of our weaknesses so we know where our blind spots are, and either strengthen those and develop those, or get partners or something that will help us with that. Now, a great way we can do that now, and I'll probably be promoting this throughout, is to have a relationship with a chatbot, like an AI chatbot, like OpenAI's, ChatGPT, or Claude is a wonderful one too. And those tools, you can put in your assessments, and they will tell you where your weaknesses may be, where your strengths are, and give you ways to, it's like having a great consultant or friend that you can bounce ideas off of. And you can do it anytime, which is really wonderful, right? So then you're looking at opportunities and threats. What the threats are: who's going to come and overcome your market or something like that, and opportunities is where can we engage in something that can develop us better, and that could be a course or learning things, or it could be a certain market where it looks like an opportunity. You can open a business in it. Lots of different ways to think of opportunities and threats, right? So here's some just strategy concepts: strategic thinking, planning, implementation, management, leadership. Lean strategy is sort of like it came out of the whole lean ideas of lean entrepreneurship, lean startups. And then measuring. what gets measured gets managed, right? Really, what we're doing is this, it's a cycle. You think of something, you implement it, you measure what it is, and then you refine things, and then you implement that, and you just keep going. It's a constant iteration process, right? So here's something interesting, a way to develop a strategic mindset. Games, games have been revealed through research, board games, to help your brain development and help you develop a strategy. And so here's some games, right? So, and these are fun to play. Risk is a fabulous game. It's a strategy board game about diplomacy. It's like world negotiating and things like that. Just a great game. And here's one, just a classic. I love to play chess, and there's great, chess.com. You can play with people all over the world. And they also have lessons on there and stuff. It's a very cool site. But it's a really interesting game, and especially when you study it, you study the openings, right? The defensive openings for black and the offensive openings for white, because white moves first. And there's ones like the Nimzo Indian defense for black, and all these different kinds of structured openings that have maybe 8, 10 moves into the game. And then there's the middle game where you're playing and trying to get everybody's pieces. And then end game where there might be just a few pieces left. And how do you set up for checkmate of your opponent? So that's basically the structure of chess and how to study it. And it's a fascinating thing to study and take. There's plenty of lessons online. You go on YouTube and find a lot of great, instructors for free and stuff. Go. Now this is a fantastic game, right? This is an ancient Asian game from China, and it has even orders of magnitude more permutations than chess. And it actually was just an AI program, AlphaGo, a few years ago, beat the Go champion, and no one ever thought that could happen. There's a great documentary about it that's really interesting, but a super game to play, and a fun game to learn and to help build up your mind and your analytic skills and your strategic comprehension. Diplomacy is another game like this, another fun one. So those are just a couple of games. So I just wanted to ask you a question now too, like which game best describes your leadership style? Is it chess, sort of calculated and positional and memorizing things? Go, where it's long-term territorial thinking, where you're trying to grab territory. Risk, aggressive expansion, and diplomacy about alliances. So it's an interesting thing, to think about what game do you sort of gravitate towards, and that sort of defines a little bit about your personality. Kind of fun to think about. So that's the end of that little section on strategy. Now we're going to talk about strategic thinking. Go into one of these in detail, right? So strategic thinking, leaders, great athletes, you have to play the game and also observe it as a whole. And that is a challenge, right? You have to be up here thinking about everything, but actually engage at the same time. You have to, really keep your eye on the big picture and not get lost in the day-to-day action. So you're actively involved in tactics, right, all the time, but you also have to keep a strategic mindset reserve. And it's basically a vision and a sense of the future, right? That's what we're thinking about, is what is happening now. And things are going so fast, right? With the technical developments and businesses having to change. We just went through, Claude, the AI program just released a whole bunch of new agentic tools, agents, AI agents. And suddenly people realized, investors, that these new tools can do a lot of things that full-on companies are doing, like Salesforce and other companies in marketing and things like that. And there was a big sell-off in the stock market of those companies because people realized, oh my gosh, AI is going to transform how we do these things. And these companies may be vulnerable. You talk about opportunities and threats, right? So something like that, incredibly disruptive and sort of seemed to come out of nowhere. But how do we know what's going to be happening in, in healthcare, in genetic engineering, in robotics, in artificial intelligence, in the melding of robotics with artificial intelligence, drones and what's happened with drones, drones on the battlefield in Ukraine, drones. If you've watched any of the Olympic coverage of the last couple of weeks, it's absolutely incredible to see they have these drones flying right behind the skiers and the bobsledders and things, and it just looks amazing. It's a view of the action that we've never had before on television. So all of these things keep changing. We have to think about where is technology going, where are consumer behavior going, and try to position ourselves at that place, right? Wayne Gretzky, the great hockey player, said, "I don't skate to where the puck is. I skate to where the puck is going to be." And if you have that kind of court sense, that kind of, field sense of where things are going, that's what we want to develop. Is we want to skate to where that future puck is going to be, because it's going to take us a while to implement something, right? And we want to make sure we're going in the right direction. And what technologies are going to converge and make a new market, all that kind of stuff. So we really have to keep educated. So here's an interesting thing, that with entrepreneurship, with business, with everything, all enterprises and projects, big or small, right? They start first as an idea. Everything is a product of mind first. You have an idea, and if it's a good idea or if it's something you want to follow through on, then you have to figure out how to take that idea and to make it into something tangible, right? And that's the second creation of things. Starts in our mind, and then the second development is, how do we bring that into the real world? IRL, right? In real world. So we talk about mindset. Strategic thinking requires a certain mindset, a way of thinking. And we've just talked about that, that accepts change. We have to accept change, and we have to try to predict what's going on in the future and what our challenges are going to be and what our opportunities are going to be. So being opportunistic. This is a picture of Teddy Roosevelt. He was the president of the United States around 1900. And what he said was, do what you can with what you have where you are. Instead of thinking, oh, I have to raise $1 million before I can do my project, or, oh, I have to just learn 3 more subjects before I can do this or that. Start now. Start today. Do it. And that's how we learn, is by actually getting involved. And then the next set of issues will reveal themselves to us. And then we address those, and we keep going on and on. That's how it works. So I love this quote, do what you can with what you have where you are right now. I think that's really a critical way to think about things. So strategic thinking, again, always question our assumptions. What assumptions are we making that are still correct, and what are outmoded? Systems thinking, very, very key. And envisioning possible futures, where things are going to go. Are we going to have 1 million domestic robots in another year or two, that we can teach to wash our windows and cook our food and, mow the lawn or mop the floor, or all kinds of interesting things like that, right? Or take care of of us as we get elderly, or is that just something that is going to be more difficult to do than we think right now? Translational thinking. That's really the key thing, what we talked about. It starts as an idea in the mind, and we have to translate it into something tangible, concrete in the world. So entrepreneurship is the pursuit of opportunity, without the regard for the resources currently controlled. Yeah, we can't say, well, I don't have the resources now. It's like, no, we move forward with what we can right here where we are and find out. Bismarck, statesmanship is the art of the possible. That's really what we're trying to do with strategy, is what is possible, and thinking about that. And I love this T.S. Eliot quote, between the idea and the act lies the shadow. And that's the thing. That's the translational thing, right? Here's the idea. Lots of people have ideas. Ideas are a dime a dozen, right? It's like, can you take that idea and make it into something feasible? A lot of times I run into people who say, I can't share my idea because it's too valuable. Somebody else will steal it and take it. Well, it's so hard to turn an idea into something practical, especially, as a company, into something viable, that you don't really have to worry too much about people stealing your idea. and really where the moats are created, where the the strategic advantage, the competitive advantage is in the actual doing. So assessing change, we have to be very comfortable with change, especially in the world we live in. I mean, change is probably the only constant, right? The only thing that stays the same is change. Things are going to change. We keep thinking, wow, I keep thinking, artificial intelligence, it's incredible where it is now. And, you think, oh, well, it's going to plateau and then we can get used to and adapt to where things are now. No, we are on an exponential curve where things are accelerating the rate of change. So we have to be really comfortable with, oh, it's changing faster and faster. And I meet people that are just, you know, completely discombobulated by the rate of change and what's happening. Where I feel a lot of times what I look for is, oh my gosh, there's the thing that has solved a problem that I've had for so long. And I'm so grateful that finally I don't have to do that anymore. Like if it's, busy work or something that I don't want to do. And, so that way, I really, can adapt to change quickly because I embrace it because like, oh, finally this is available. And so here, and I'm gonna here's a comment. I've been in a strategy workshop, and the facilitator defines strategy as a choice of the competition one wants to participate in. It would be great to have your thoughts. Yeah, right. The competition that you want to participate in, and I would argue too that the best thing is to find out where there isn't competition. Um, because what we're trying to do is find somewhere where we can have some sort of a monopoly, where we have some differentiation, where our product, our service, ourselves, whatever it is, we're all unique. So we're looking for where we can find a place where we're not going to be in competition with other groups, but where we can circumvent competition by differentiation, by differentiating our product or service enough that there really isn't that much competition. And that could be on a number of different parameters, right? But it's really about serving a customer or serving another person, that where that goes. So that's a great question. I really appreciate that. Yeah. So strategic thinkers are always questioning, what are we doing now that we should stop doing? When you find yourself in a hole, stop digging, right? And what are we not doing that we should start doing? And what are we doing now that we should continue to do, but perhaps do it in a different way, right? And that's key too. You're iterating. What can you do? And you're always testing. We're always running experiments. Never think of something as a failure. Think about it. You paid money or time to find out information about, well, that market wasn't really what it was, or our product didn't really match what consumers, what customers wanted. And then you iterate and you try to find out where that point is where you get that product, market fit. And so those are the kind of things you're constantly asking, those kind of questions. And those questions are applicable to everything in a company, right? Not just the products and services, but the internal things to the company, the policies and procedures and processes and strategies. We're always looking at our strategies. So these glasses really work, by the way. But you have to have a penetrating vision. You have to be able to see around walls, right? You have to see into the future, and the future is so foggy, and one of the ways is examining our assumptions, because our assumptions, our beliefs form our assumptions, and then our assumptions drive all of our decision making and all of our ideas, right? So you really want to understand those and make sure that they're serving us. And you want to understand systems, systems, especially in this day and age, you can automate a lot of things, and you can make great systems that then perpetuate your business, and develop alternative scenarios of the future, and weight those with probabilities, assign probabilities to the possible futures. We all need to think probabilistically. It's not just, that it's either going to be this way or that way. It's like, well, 80% it could be that way, and 60% maybe that way, and things like that. So you really have to get comfortable thinking probabilistically, and forecasting, right? All these different kind of changes, technological, social, demographic changes. and critical changes in legislative and political areas. We're really going through a massive change in the globalization and what it means to markets and to businesses and how they're going to get their products. A lot of products go many back and forth between different countries as they get built. And all those things are up for grabs now, changing. Now, here's something: strategic thinking versus SMEs. SMEs are subject matter experts, right? And if you're a subject matter expert, one thing one field very, very well, where strategic thinking has to be much broader than that. You're thinking across all kinds of things. So generalists usually have a you need to be a generalist to some degree to be good at strategic thinking, where subject matter experts can be too defined in one area. And it's great to be a subject matter expert, but you also want to have enough of a broad vision to be, not to get carried away in the day-to-day and the tactics, but to have a broad vision and ideas about strategy. So the management of strategy, how do you do this? It's supported by continuous management of it and periodic processes of planning, right? It's feedback and measurement. What gets measured gets managed. There's that great book by John Doerr, who is a very famous venture capitalist, about measuring things and then managing in that way. And what gets measured gets managed was actually said by the great Peter Drucker, who was a management professor at Harvard and very famous for his management books. So that's the end of the strategic thinking part. So now we're going to talk about some elements of strategy, right? So here's just the loop, right? We're talking about iteration, right? You have the strategic thinking, planning, implementation, then you measure it, then you revise your strategic thinking, you revise your planning, you implement that, and then whatever comes back from that, you keep going in this type of thing. Any plan, when it actually gets implemented, when it meets reality, there's going to be some adjustments to be made. Nothing survives. Your strategic thinking and planning is never so brilliant that when you implement it, oh my gosh, the world just conforms to your ideas. So you have to be prepared for that. So here's the loop kind of: think, plan, execute, measure, and then adapt. And then back to thinking again. And you just keep going in a loop, right? So here's some elements of strategy, right? You're getting objectives. Where do we want to go? If we don't know where we're going to go, we may not get there, right? And then the scope. What is the scope of what we're going to do? What are the resources that we have that we can do? We can't do 85 things at once or something like that. You have to really define the scope and limit the scope. Constraints are creative in a lot of ways. And then where's our competitive advantage? What do we do better than anyone else? So objectives, define success, right? And define it with metrics, KPIs and OKRs. Now, these are the things that I talk about, key performance indicators, something that you can actually measure and see how you're doing. And OKRs are objectives and key results. Same kind of things, And once again, what gets measured gets managed, And that's how we know if our strategy is effective, if our business is actually humming along. We figure out what our objectives are and how are we going to measure success. How do we know what success looks like? And then competitive advantage, right? What's hard to copy that we do and key is valued by customers. We have to be customer centric in everything that we do, right? It's absolutely critical. And what do we do that's, other people will find difficult to copy? And that's it, just even thinking of our own personalities. We're all unique. What do we do? Is it our sense of humor? Is it our bubbly personality? Whatever it is, that's hard to copy. And then we learn to lean into that, right? Leadership versus management. We talked about that a bit. Vision. It's basically vision versus execution. So here's a challenge. All enterprises begin in the mind's eye. Imagination precedes execution. We talked about this earlier. And strategy, translational ideas, right, translates vision into reality. That's what we're really trying to do. And that's what strategy does, is that bridge from our idea to making something concrete that people can touch and, or interact with, And being opportunistic, we looked at that Teddy Roosevelt thing, do what you can with what you have, where you are. Action beats perfect information. We'll never have perfect information. Part of strategy and strategic thinking is coming up with something when we don't have perfect information. We have, holes in our information. We still have to make decisions. And momentum matters. You do something. I always like the idea of, instead of the old phrase, ready, aim, fire, I like ready, fire, aim. We do something, we prepare with strategic thinking. Then we do some action, the fire part, and then we aim. Then we measure and we refine things. So I think that's a great way to think about uh, how to confront things, how to advance. It comes from action. You have to have a bias towards action. So we talked about SWOT, right? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And here's another one, PEST, which PEST, not the greatest acronym, right? But you're looking for what are the different things that can change in your framework: political, economic, sociocultural, and technological. And those things really, really matter. And then PESTLE, adds legislative and environmental factors too. Absolutely key. Absolutely key to think about those kind of things. So now let's talk about a few of the great, just a few, three, but the great, some great strategic thinkers. And these are just some picks. There's lots of other ones too, but just to think about and get started. And Kenichi Omai's The Mind of the Strategist, a great book, a great read. It's about clear thinking and not rigid planning. You know, Focus on your relative advantage. Competitive advantages, not absolute strength, but relative to the others, right? Relative to your competitors. You win by creating value for customers. There's no question that's what we have to do. It's not what we think the tools or the services and the products are. It's what do customers think. And so here's some other ideas from his thing. The strategic, triangle. Your company's capabilities. You can't yet what the customer's needs are and what the competitive positioning are. Like you said in your question about what competition do you want to participate in? And unlike Western heavy planning heavy, Omai, who's Asian, from Japan, emphasizes intuition, insight, and synthesis. And I think that's so cool. It's so great. It's really, I love the Japanese and Chinese and Korean, Vietnamese, the Asian mindsets, Singapore. It's a different way of thinking, and it's just a wonderful way of thinking. And if you can embrace some of that, that expands your thinking too. So it's just wonderful. And so that's another reason why I like Kenichi Omai's book. Michael Porter, he's like the guru, started competitive strategy kind of thinking. It's about positioning. He has the 5 forces of strategy, and industry structure, deliberate choices, and saying no, and really looking for trade-offs. You know, um, and it's key. A lot of very successful people, and Warren Buffett has said this, really learn how to say no. You have to say, or even Steve Jobs said, focus is not about focusing on one thing. It's saying no to the other 1,000 good ideas that can distract you from your course. You have to stay on course. So saying no is a really key thing. But Porter is more structural and analytical, where Omai is more intuitive and insightful. And those are both great. If you can get a balance between those kind of ideas and visions, you can be a really powerful strategist. Now, Hamilton Helmer and the 7 powers of enduring advantage. Now, he broke it down into 7 habits. And what I really love about this book is, well, there's this great podcast, and I really encourage you to take a look. It's called Acquired, and look for that podcast. It's 2 guys, Ben and Dan. I think no, I can't. Ben and Dan, and brilliant guys, and they do deep dives on companies. And it's like 6 hours of the podcasts are long. I mean, they're amazing. And they talk about the history of the company, the strategy, the development, the technologies, everything. And at the end, they go through and assess that company. And they do all kinds of cool companies like, Google or Porsche or Costco or Trader Joe's or, just Hermes. just fantastic. Not only technical companies, that's what I was saying there, but and then Microsoft, all the great technical companies too. But they go by at the end and analyze each company using these seven powers, the Hamilton Helmer seven powers. And so that's where I heard about it and thought, wow, it's really great. And so I encourage you to watch a couple of those episodes, pick a company you like and listen to them. You won't be disappointed, I can tell you. But scale economies, network economies, networking, network effects where more people use, like Facebook or something. If more people use it, it gets more powerful, right? If all your friends are on there, it's much more powerful. Counter positioning, counter positioning to other companies, that's a competitive thing, right? Switching costs, if you have costs where it would cost people to switch to a different thing, a different competitor, that's like a moat, keeps your customers with you. Branding, Apple is a brilliant case of branding, right? Besides having incredible products, right? Cornered resource, if you have you all own that resource, and process power. And so it's really fantastic. And I encourage you to watch one of those podcasts. And at the end, listen to Ben and Dan go through that and talk about how they analyze a company. It's really a great exercise. Now we're going to talk about very quickly, some economic frameworks for better decision making. And this is from my new book, Economics ASAP. It's part of the ASAP series, and it's economic frameworks for better business decisions. So the strategic paradox, right, is smart leaders make expensive mistakes. And why do they make those mistakes? Pricing decisions, like your competitor drops prices. Do you match that, or what do you do? Market entry. A market is growing. Should you enter that market? Or resource allocation? Where should you put your resources? Allocate your resources. So there's four, as I said, there's four different variables. The market lens, which is microeconomics, basically. The cycle lens, which is macroeconomics. The numbers lens, which is managerial economics, your cost structure. And the human lens, which is behavioral economics and looking for cognitive biases. So let's look at the part, reading, price, power, and competition, right? So here's an interesting thing. Elasticity of price. Now, what that means is if you raise your price, how many of your customers do you lose? Because as you raise prices, you're going to lose customers. Say if you're selling a pizza at $5, you have 100 customers. If you raise the price to $20, you may lose half your customers, right? They'll go to another place. And another thing is if your price is inelastic, that means that you don't lose customers. Say like cigarettes, right? If you're a smoker and they double the price of cigarettes, you'll gripe about it, but you're not going to stop smoking. In the short term, you're going to just keep buying the cigarettes and eat the extra cost. Same thing with gasoline at the pump for your car, right? So here's an example. There's two options. You can either raise your prices and then what happens? And this says you have inelastic elasticity of demand, and it's at 0.5. So you raise some money. Or the other one is lower prices and gain a lot more customers. And so which do you think, this slide didn't come out so well, but which do you think is going to, which one wins, raising the prices or lowering the prices? Interesting. Okay, so let's take a look. So here it is. If I'm sorry, let me go back here. If we, it's sort of counterintuitive. You think, oh, you raise prices, you make a lot more money, you get more revenue, right? If you raise prices, you lose 100 customers, right? And if you lower prices, you gain 400 customers, and you make more revenue with lowering your prices by $2,000. But you have to think about costs, right? The variable costs, because now we only have 900 here, are only 13,000. The variable cost, because now I have 400 more customers to serve, are 21,000. So we actually make more revenue. We make more net income. The contribution margin is more with actually raising prices and losing some customers. Interesting, right? So those are fun things to think about. So reading your competition, here's the thing, like what kind of competition do you want to participate in, right? Competitor A is a premium company, competitor B is a mid-market company, and competitor C is a budget company. And here comes little old you, right? And what do you want? Which kind of market do you want to get into? Which one of these would you like to compete against? What competition do you want to participate in? That was an excellent question, by the way. Sen, you okay? So the premium is, can you justify that price premium? Think about Apple. I mean, Apple is a premium product. It's priced like a luxury brand. Their margins are amazing, and they can justify that because their products and service are awesome, and they have this entire ecosystem, around it. So, that's why mid market are you have to be, if you're going to enter in the middle market, you have to differentiate yourself. You have to be differentiated. You can't just go in and try to compete. And so, being better in three specific ways is a good way to test that, right? And if you want to go into the budget, you better have a cost structure that will allow you to make money. And by cost structure means your costs are a lot less than what you're selling it for, even when you're selling it at a budget, so that you can make money in the budget competitive uh, in the budget area. So here, here's the key insight here. Positioning isn't about price. It's about which customers you serve better. And that's another way to think about it, instead of which competition you want to participate in, which customers do you serve better? And whether your cost structure is going to make that profitable. That's really key. So let's talk about cost structure and profitability drivers, right? These are all economics things. So you have a new product line, and the fixed costs are going to be 50,000 a month, and your variable costs are 30 a month, and your price is $80 a unit. So your contribution is going to be $50 a unit on the variable side, right? So the break even there, $50 a unit. So where's your break even? And break even is where you cover your fixed costs with how many units you have to sell to cover those fixed costs, right? Each month. And so if it's $50,000 and you divide that by the contribution margin, you get 1,000 units. Do you think that you're going to be able to sell 1,000 units? Having a high fixed cost gives you operating leverage, but it also gives you a higher break even. And if you don't make it, you're going to lose more. If you have lower fixed costs, more variable costs, it can be a less risky business, but you don't make as much money when you really start to accelerate. So here's two companies, and this is the kind of stuff we go through in the course, at mba-asap.com, and also in the community, where it's not just all of my courses and books and everything, and I teach in there, and also you get the peer-to-peer, all the other people that are in there, just like you, doing the same kind, just like us, doing the same kind of thing, trying to better ourselves and trying to figure things out. So you get that peer-to-peer interaction in the community. And that's a great thing to do. The links are in the at the bottom here, but that's mba-asap.mn.co to go to the community. So here is high operating leverage and low operating leverage, and you compare these two companies, and you can see where the risks and rewards are there. So cognitive biases, we talked about that too. This is from behavioral economics, right? Here's 5 biases that cost money. Smart people make poor decisions. Anchoring, the first number in a negotiation controls it, And this all goes through my book. And again, it goes in the community and things too. We talk about this a lot. The sunk cost fallacy. Sunk cost, if you're making a decision, make it not on past investments, but if I was taking this investment today, would I do this investment? There's a great story about the guys who were running Intel, and it was Gordon Moore and I can't think of the other guy's name. He's brilliant. He's the guy that actually said this, but and he wrote the book Only the Paranoid Survive. I'll think of his name in a minute, but you probably know it. He's a brilliant guy. But they were trying to think about, should they stay in the memory market or should they just go over into making microprocessors? And the memory market was becoming much more of a commodity, a lot more competition. Margins were really squeezed. And so they were wondering what to do. And then this fellow left the room and came back to Gordon Moore and said, you know what? I just had a revelation. If we got fired today and a new group of executives came in, what would decision they make? And Gordon Moore said, obviously they'd jettison the memory company. He said, that's what we have to do. They had that as a legacy business. They didn't want to give it up. But when they thought about it that way, if we had to start all over today, would we stay in this business? And the answer was no. That's the sunk cost fallacy. You have to say, you can't say, I've already committed so much time and effort and money to this thing or whatever that I can't give up now. You have to, if I was starting from scratch today, would I still pursue this option? And if the answer is no, it's time to get out of there. Confirmation bias, obviously, we only see what we want to see. That's a big thing nowadays with our social media, right? We get the algorithms tell us, oh, if you like that, well, let me feed you more of that. And so we get into these, spirals and feedback where we're getting exactly what we already think. And so our ideas are being reinforced and are not being challenged. There's a great book by Doris Goodwin, his wonderful historian, called a Company of Rivals. I think it's something Rivals, Company of Rivals. And it's about Abraham Lincoln and his cabinet. And his cabinet was people that did not agree with him. And by having people that disagreed, and then you could have that struggle would make a consensus then that would make better decisions, because if everybody agrees with your decision, then you probably, might not be making the right decision. There's a great, from a board meeting from the fellow who, Alfred Sloan, who was the famous, guy who ran General Motors, the car company back in the heyday, and a brilliant guy. And there's a board meeting, and he said, okay, since we're all in agreement on this point, I suggest we table this point and come back next time when we've developed some disagreement about this, because if we're all in agreement, we can't be right. It has to be somebody, we have to think about what are the things we're not thinking about? What are the things we need to, be aware of that could make this fail? And that's another thing, do a pre-mortem, before, when you're starting out. Say it's 18 months on or 12 months on and this project just failed. What made it fail? Instead of a post-mortem, do it pre and think, oh, those are the kind of things we have to think about. Loss aversion, very important. The research has said, that losses are more painful to us psychologically than gains are, rewarding to us. So we really tend to discount good risks to take because we overemphasize the potential loss. And herding, another thing, like being lemmings, herd mentality. You hear that with investors. Don't go along with the herd. You want to be contrarian, and everything. If everybody's doing it, then maybe it's too late to do it yourself. Like, well, everybody's jumping into that market. We need to do it, as well. So that's something to be aware of, So here's an idea of the sunk cost fallacy, as we talked about. And you can look at this, but, we've invested too much to quit now. The correct decision is it's time to quit. It's time to quit this thing. So debiasing your decisions, try to find contradicting ideas from yourself. What bias might be affecting you? Are you anchoring? Are you avoiding sunk costs? Try to find out. If you're aware of the biases, you can't get rid of them, because these biases are basically baked into our evolutionary brain. We've developed these things called heuristics, which are shortcuts to make decisions fast that help us in many situations. But if it's an analytic type situation, decision making, then we have to really think about it in a different way and think about maybe these biases that are the sort of flip side of the heuristic coin may be hindering and hampering our ability to think clearly through and make the best decisions we can. So now let's talk about decision framework. The market lens, we talked about the number lens, the cycle lens, and the human lens. Here's 12 questions that you can ask yourself and you should ask for every big decision you make. Not every decision, like where am I going to go eat dinner tonight? You don't want to go through this kind of process, but it's like, what kind of career should I go for? What should I do for the next decade? What should I do for the next couple of years? Is this something that I should think about doing or not? If you develop, going through a checklist like this, it can be very, very, very helpful. So here's an example, market expansion. And if we think about these things, there's four established competitors, demand's growing at that amount, and you have a elastic, uh, elasticity of demand, then that's a warning sign. You know, you need this type of investment. Break even's going to be quite high. That's a warning sign too. You know, it's and then also the cycle. You look into macroeconomics. Say if this is expand into Europe. Europe's entering recession, raising rates. That's a red flag. The human. The CEO is anchored. These kind of things. If you get these kind of red flags and warnings, it's probably not the time to make that decision, right? Probably not the time to enter it. Go back and think about something else. You don't want to make an expensive wrong decision. So strategy isn't about being smart. There's a great quote by Charlie Munger, who is Warren Buffett's partner, and I really love this. He's like, "We didn't get to where we are by being brilliant all the time. We got to where we are by being consistently not stupid." And I think that's great. It's really the key. If you can identify your blind spots, identify where the mistakes might be, and in a consistent basis, not fall prey to those, you're going to win. So it's all about using frameworks, the right frameworks to make better decisions than your competition. So next steps, right? Just to talk about, apply that checklist to your next major decision, and you can read Economics ASAP for a deep dive on those things. Take the MBA ASAP course. That's just a great thing. I mean, now we have a diploma that's available, accredited diploma in conjunction with Florida Global University. You can find the course on my website, mba-asap.com. And then also, join the community. I highly encourage you to get into the community and start participating. And thanks so much for for participating. And I will see you next month. And take care and enjoy the month. I'll be back next month with another webinar. Bye.